Multiple day visit to Comic-Con 2018. It's off to a great start. I know I'm having a great time, although being a little exhausted. I'm not sure about you guys, but it's been a really great experience. So today we're going to kick off talking about Hollywood and emerging tech. And I think that looking around, and everyone can attest by all the panels that are going on, everything that's happening in the exhibit hall and outside at the other activations, it's not just Hollywood and emerging tech. And given some of the background of everyone on this panel, I think we could easily change the topic to entertainment and emerging technology. So thank you. No, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So today I would love to kick off a little bit in terms of looking and having a conversation about the evolving way that we engage in our entertainment. And by way of background, my name is Anastasia, and I work for the collective video game industry. So the big publishers, developers, console makers have a collective philanthropic foundation that they all contribute into. And our primary responsibility is to help usher in the next generation of creative minds in the industry. So I'm super excited today as we talk about some of these technologies. So getting started, since we have a pretty big panel, I would appreciate if everyone would introduce themselves, give their title, where they work quickly, so we can just sort of dive in. And John, maybe we can start with you and move down to Tarang.
I am John Kirkpatrick, the CMO of an organization called The Void.
My name is Ted. I'm the futurist for a little movie studio you might have heard of called Paramount Pictures. Been around for a while.
My name is Arvel Chappell. I work for Warner Brothers, and I lead research on advanced narratives.
Hi, my name is Joanna Popper. I lead up location-based entertainment for virtual reality for HP. I previously was at NBC Universal for a long time, and if any of you guys have seen or have been able to see the Jack Ryan VR experience, it's using our technology for the backpacks.
Hi, I'm Mark Harwood. I'm the senior producer in charge of VR projects for Starbreeze Studios.
Hi, I'm Tarang Sethia. I'm the Vice President of Digital Customer and Store Experience at 7-Eleven.
I have to thank you guys because I think this is the first panel I've ever done where I said, could you just keep it really short? And every single one of you did. Awesome, I love it. So, speaking of titles, all right, Ted, let's start with you.
Okay.
Futurist?
What do you want to know?
That's so cool. Like, what is that?
Yeah, so I work in a pretend industry, the motion picture industry. I have a pretend job in the pretend industry. I'm a futurist, which is not a real job. It's literally a pretend job. I work in the land of pretend. I experiment, explore, try and figure out where things are headed, not just around the next bend, but around kind of the next 3 bends. I'm not really interested or all that enamored with the next year or 2. I'm really studying and researching the next 10 years plus and the steps that it takes to get there. So everything we do near term, which we do a lot of stuff, actually has an eye on when everything changes again. So when this thing is a distant memory that every single one of you have, and there's something new and even more impressive in many, many ways than something you just hold in front of your face. That's what a big part of my work is.
So all of you here are driving conversations about changing the way that we engage with entertainment, looking to what the next type of entertainment might be, how do we evolve what we already have. What are you guys seeing as some of the most interesting, and not to use a very overused word, but innovative ways of creating new entertainment or reimagining the entertainment that we already are experiencing?
I would say, first, has anyone heard of or done The Void in the room? I love that. So honestly, we're taking a stance where we're trying to create a completely new vertical of not only entertainment but experience. and recognizing that technology has gotten to a point where almost anything is possible, but at the same time recognizing that human interaction, human experience has to be at the same level of that technology. So whatever you create in those technological fields has to have real human emotion, has to have real physicality, real human tactile, grabbing, feeling, walking, temperature, smell, whatever it might be, and really immersing people in storytelling and story living in a way that's never been possible up to this point. So for instance, we released Star Wars Secrets of the Empire in December of last year. As someone that just turned 50 years old, I've been waiting for literally since 1977 as a human being to walk into that world and not passively think that I'm looking at it, but to physically feel it and interact with it and feel like I'm a part of it and affecting what the world is actually going to become. So everything that we're doing, every experience that we take, is taking that technology, taking that human experience, and finding ways to find that confluence and bringing them together.
Cool. Anyone else want to add to that, please?
So I want to take it through a history. You know, when people used to go to movie theaters, they still go to movie theaters, but the entertainment, for that entertainment, people had to go somewhere. When the TVs came out, the viewership increased because it came in their ecosystem. And it stayed like that for 25, 30 years, right? Until gaming came on and mobile gaming and mobile videos came on, and the engagement increased. But with the emergence of technology with augmented reality and virtual reality, every consumer becomes the front and center of that experience and is able to be part of that experience, combining the physical and digital world and be at the center of it. So I think the entertainment of the future is going to be defined by that interaction of the consumer.
So
I was saying what might be kind of interesting to think about, because I think about it a lot, and your Deadpool activation at 7-Eleven is a good example of it, is we are getting to the point now where we're starting to be able to theme park the universe, to literally turn every environment, the most pedestrian environments, the place I go get a Slurpee, into a theme park, into a little bit of visual, physical, spatial entertainment. It doesn't have to live in special places anymore. It doesn't have to have special real estate or geography or physicality anymore. We can build it almost anywhere. And that, over the next 10 to 20 years, you're going to see our universe go through a fundamental change that people that are living inside a world like Comic-Con can take massive advantage of, because you live in the world of fantasy, you like it. The whole world of reality is getting ready to turn into the world of fantasy. And that's a fun place to be.
So this kind of enhanced reality, if you will, that we're kind of talking about a little bit, you know, billions of dollars are being invested in it. Very different types of consumer elements are looking at it to not only sell their products, but also have people beyond entertainment value be engaged in some way. There's a lot of growth going on, but who's driving this trend? Are companies kind of raising their hand and saying we need to evolve the way we market, we need to evolve the way our entertainment is, and this is kind of the direction that we're going? Or are consumers of this type of technology helping push companies towards it?
I'd say there's a combination of a lot of different factors that are happening at once. One, the tech is actually come to a place that it's ready to be productized and commercialized in a way that it wasn't in the past. So there's that factor. There's the factor of the change in the way that we're interacting with media. So you mentioned, you know, people still go to the movies, and at the same time, the digitalization of Netflix and YouTube and some of the other Amazon platforms have impacted the way that we're interacting with our entertainment. Amazon has impacted retail, right? So you have theme parks and movie theaters and malls looking for something new and innovative to drive consumers into their location, and the tech is ready and the audiences are ready to try out some of these virtual experiences in an environment where you have, you know, great docents and great brand ambassadors helping them through any of the stumbling blocks of the tech. And so it's kind of a convergence of a lot of different things that are making the universe ripe right now for location-based entertainment.
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of the two. You know, the consumer, the audience has bigger expectations than ever before, and business is always looking for new ways to innovate. I think that, you know, since we launched The Void, we've had 500,000 people go through up to this point in, you know, relatively less than a year. By the end of the year, there'll be over 1 million people go through, and that's literally in less than 10 locations. So there's huge consumer appetite for them to experience new ways, and if anything, I mean, looking at Amazon, looking at Netflix, looking at the way studios or networks are moving forward with entertainment, the consumer is getting more and more control in what is being done, from binging to you know, gaming to whatever it might be, and I think both are going to grow equally. You know, the technology's gotten to that point.
So we're talking about technology is where it needs to be, but what remains the obstacles to really actually getting this more integrated into?
Well,
I don't want to say everyday life.
Well, technology is ready, but it will still continue to improve, right? So that curve is still moving. But
the technology is nowhere near at the point for mass consumption.
Right.
You got way too many friction points, and these devices are still way too primitive for every one of you to have it all the time with you. But over the next 10 years, watch what's coming. Because these huge industries, these companies that have massive amounts of capital, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, this interesting little company down in Florida that's raised $3 billion as a startup to give you something to wear that can create magic. You're going to see all those friction points removed, and then the magic is getting ready to happen. It's really not there yet, but it's coming.
I think it's not just about technology. I think the consumer shift is happening. Earlier, it was okay to bring people into your ecosystem, and consumers would go there. Now, with the choice in the hand of the consumer, and the consumer being trained by Amazon and Google, everybody's forced to be in the consumer's ecosystem. And so as an example, you know, you had community centers where people would go and share ideas, right? And now people do it on social media channels. And so now you have to create this community center, and I hate to use this word, but 7-Eleven, which is within 1 mile of 60% of American population. If you create that as a theme park, as an engagement center, where they come by themselves and they feel it's in their community, right? And we bring all the experiences in their ecosystem, then the stickiness is going to increase, right? It's not technology. You know, there has been research in this technology for a long time, but the application has happened because of the platform shift driven by consumer preferences in their ecosystem.
So what do you all think? You know, we've probably panels like this 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We were talking about technologies such as 3D, and not to pick on 3D, but we were probably talking about it and having a very similar conversation, like, oh, it's going to redefine this and reimagine the way we engage with our movies, and they didn't necessarily stick. Kind of a two-part question: why do you guys maybe think that it didn't stick? And were there any lessons that we've kind of learned from some of the things over the last 10 years that are helping define what this experience is, this enhanced reality, to make sure that this sticks, this evolves into what we really consume?
I think you could probably speak to this as well, but I think the easiest thing is that the consumer wasn't asking necessarily for 3D in their homes. And you know, 3D on a television is never going to be the same thing as 3D in life, but I do think people are asking for more gamification in everything that they do, for more engagement in everything that they do, and more immersion into everything that they do. So I think that the whole scope of this field is a direct response to an audience demand, which I think is the primary difference.
So some of you might find this interesting, but I get into this discussion about 3D as a failure in the home, and I will point out that 3D is actually not a failure in the home. 3D is a multi-billion-dollar success in the home, with one slight caveat. You have a perception of 3D, which I call circus 3D, which is shit coming out of your face like this. And then there's 3D on the Z plane, which goes in like this, which if you play a game like Grand Theft Auto, or if you play Minecraft, or if you play effectively any video game on the planet, it works in 3D. It goes in, and your brain puts together the 3D and understands it as a three-dimensional world. It's a multi-billion dollar success that is 3D in your home, and it happens every single day all around the world. It's just, it's just not this kind of 3D, that's all. That's what didn't work in the home, because it doesn't make sense to wear glasses in the home and have shit popping out of your face like that. But what does make sense is, let's make gaming experiences that actually live in the plane, in the Z-Depth, and every single video game, with very few exceptions today, live in the Z-Depth. So.
I think the other thing that really is affecting that is there's not really a business case for 3D shit in your face.
Yeah.
Whereas for virtual reality and things like that, there's all sorts of different uses for data visualization, for architecture, for medical simulation, for training, all of these kind of things. And I think that's a primary thing that you guys probably sell a lot of based on that.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that in terms of the applications that you guys see, because it's not, these enhanced realities are no longer being confined to having conversations about entertainment. They're very quickly expanding the scope to education. What are you guys seeing, some of the really cool things happening and using it? I know one of the cool things I find is doctors using it for simulating surgery before they go in and increasing their success rates using VR surgical plans. I know that's one of mine. Like, what are you guys seeing?
Any enhanced reality that solves a real consumer problem and makes them look like a hero is going to survive. And I'm going to use an example of Amazon Mirror, right? Amazon Mirror makes a consumer feel like he or she is empowered. They're trying on stuff, right, in their ecosystem where they are, and choosing and taking their own time before choosing a product, instead of having to go to a mall, to a fitting room, to a waiting area. So any enhanced reality experience that's going to solve a real problem and make a consumer feel like a hero doing a job for them during a moment that matters to them is going to survive, right? And like the 3D classes at home, right? Watching 3D movies on 3D TVs, it really didn't give the experience, right? Never made a consumer feel like a hero, that it was always a second-grade experience. So,
I'll say really quickly, in development now, you mentioned education, we have at least 2 different opportunities where, just imagine walking through the void, entering in a photorealistic ancient civilization that literally is photorealistic, interacting with it, engaging with it, and then going further into that portal of the void and actually interacting with that civilization in real time as it existed then. It will completely reinvent the face of what education is, not only here in North America, but around the world. And we'll have something actually in market within 18 months.
So in terms of the business use cases, there are, it's basically businesses are using virtual reality or augmented reality for anywhere they can help them to cut costs, to increase productivity, or to enhance a customer experience. So from automotive to architecture to military training to medical and other types of education you guys already mentioned, it's very much penetrating. And the estimates are that by 2020, 20% of businesses will be using virtual reality as part of their life cycle. So an example for just for the military, the Secretary of Defense their idea is that any soldier should have seen that battle in VR 25 times before they actually go to a real battle. So they're being trained in virtual reality and feeling and learning what it will be like to go through that experience. Professional sports teams are doing the same thing. So, from the German national team, although frankly they didn't do that well in the World Cup this year, so I don't know if they're the best example. But some of the football teams, the U.S. football teams, the basketball teams, they're all using it. In the education example that John just gave, that there are places that you could fly to Egypt, drive to that location and show up there and still not be allowed in the tomb, but you can go in with a teacher in virtual reality and really learn about what it is, which is like something you couldn't even experience in real life.
Another key element is a lot of virtual reality is a singular, solitary experience right now. That is going to rapidly change into a shared experience. And when you can go into things with friends, family, peer, it changes the dynamic of how human beings interact because it makes it more human. So instead of passively engaging with something, you're collectively engaging with something, which is honestly something that sticks to humankind a lot easier.
Yeah, I like to take a wider view when I answer questions like this, because if you think about Homo sapiens and why we've been so successful, and it's because we've been able to pass down information. So we pass down information on cave drawings, we pass down information with the WordPress and books. And today with immersive entertainment and being able to have virtual experiences and use them for education, we can now pass down experiences. So the question is, for me, is how are we going to evolve now that we can pass down an experience? And no one knows the answer to that question, but those are the sorts of things that I think about. What would we be like in 2,000 years now that we can pass down an experience?
What we do know is that humans like to simulate things. And what virtual reality does, at the state that it's at now and for quite some time, is it allows what we call simulation behavior. It means that something that we can do in the real world, we can do in the artificial world. And then by extension, things that are very hard for the average human to do in the real world can be done in the simulation world. And effectively things that are impossible for humans to do, like go to Mars today, is effectively impossible, but not impossible in the simulation world. And the better we make the simulation, the more we can believe we are superheroes. We go to places that our physical bodies know we can't do that stuff. But virtual reality, mixed reality allows fantasy to come to life, and that's what's so fantastic about it.
I know we all have to protect our own IP and everything like that, but you guys are also out there having a lot of conversations about this technology outside of your organizations and companies, but also within. And I sometimes, when I'm looking out for ideas, using this term lightly, you either have those conversations where you wish you had that idea before someone else did, or flattery, imitation is the highest form of flattery, sort of a thing. What kind of idea or experience out there right now you guys kind of look at and go, oh, I missed the boat on that one, or oh, I'd really love to have been a part of that, or something like that.
Anything Pixar does. But seriously, I think a lot of very large entertainment entities will lean into their safety net harder than they need to. And I think that if you look at every monster hit that we have now, it all started out as an original idea. Someone drawing it on paper, someone creating a concept that says, I want to make this, and let's see if we can make it. And I often think that big companies don't lean into risk enough. They don't allow new characters to develop. And you often just see things played out over and over and over again in our worlds of entertainment, where it's like, I got it. I know what's going to happen here. Tell me a new story. Show me new characters. Bring me something new. Take bigger risks. That's kind of what I would say the challenge to this audience and this whole kind of universe that we sit in San Diego every year is, don't be afraid. Like, take bigger risks. Show us new stuff. Don't keep leaning back on the same IP over and over again.
Even from our perspective, I agree with all of that. Our inspiration comes from the world's greatest storytellers, whether it's a studio, an author, a writer, whatever it might be, and we're engaged with as many of them as we can possibly be. We're inspired by everyone in this panel, but also, the entire industry as a whole. The thing that amazes me is I've been going to Comic-Con since 1989. When I first came to Comic-Con, there were 7,500 people, and I was watching the 7 Faces of Dr. Lau at the Omni Hotel before it moved over to where it is now. And it's the same magic. It's that love and passion that was there in that room, and the fact that now those things have become manifested real. The more success all of us have individually as organizations, raising the bar on what this is, and then convincing studios and storytellers that the bar is way higher than they've expected as well. You can actually take human beings and put them into your stories, have them engage in those stories, and drive where those stories go forward. The simplest way to look at it is every studio that we talk to about the next things that we're doing, we always have to re-raise the bar again and say it's not just promoting the film you just put out. It's taking this world or this universe and actually having it manifest in people's real lives.
In retail, we talk about empowering this consumer through retailtainment, entertainment in retail. But I think the biggest opportunity is if the technology can enable us to take that store and put it on every consumer's phone, and not just in an e-commerce website way, right? But a consumer opens up a 7-Eleven and is able to experience the same 7-Eleven that he experiences down the road, clicks on it, gets whatever he or she wants, and once we can create that technological experience, we can logistically in 15 minutes provide him with that product. Nobody else can.
And just imagine the day that it's not trapped on this little 5 inches. That's what gets me, that's what wakes me up in the morning, is we are trapped in this little thing, right? We're trapped in it all day long. I was in a really interesting discussion with someone who was really important before, way important, more important than me. And we were talking about the curve of humanity from this like amazing world that we looked out that was very, very big and broad. And we've funneled it down like an hourglass to this really narrow part of humanity, which is this, right? And we're just getting ready to emerge out of this, the other side of the hourglass, to this sort of digital universe that's big and broad again, and not stuck in this little thing that we have to stare at like this, that we get to do this, but overlay it, and I could turn all you into aliens if I wanted to. It would be
Half of them already are.
What's that?
Half of them already are.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just an interesting metaphor to me.
I think the most interesting things that I've seen recently are around using biofeedback in game. So you have like games that read heart rate and change the gameplay based on heart rate. So that stuff is the most exciting stuff for me, because you're starting to get to a point where the narrative theory is starting to change a bit. So that's exciting, getting a little bit closer to the Matrix and the Westworld and to the Oasis. So that's always what I wanted to build. So to see that starting to happen now and the baby steps starting to occur is really exciting.
Even the idea of eye tracking, like where your eyes go might affect where the story goes, or what pops out in front of you, or how you take the next step. So honestly, I feel like as far as we've come, there's, the rapid acceleration is going to blow people away, honestly.
I think to build on that a little, one thing that excites me that we've played a little bit with is, to Ted's point about telling different kinds of stories, a lot of what we're talking about now and a lot of the content that people are producing right now is really directed content, which is to say if you take the books or a filmic model, it's someone else telling their story in which the audience gets to be sort of a passive viewer. As opposed to I think the vision of Westworld, which is that you are an active person in that world, which gets into sort of the original idea from the MMORPGs, where the concept was that although much of it is scripted, any of the people that you talk to could in fact be real. And so being allowed to be sort of more of a resident in that world with your depth of experience and what your emotions and your intellect bring to that situation and allowing that to inform the story, I think that's where it becomes much more interesting as opposed to a prescribed role.
So you guys, we've got a few individuals up here who have started their own companies or started within smaller companies that are now growing, but we certainly have some, legacy corporations represented up here. And sometimes people find it easier when there's new ideas out there to start from scratch, because sometimes interjecting new ideas that are really big inside kind of legacy institutions can be very difficult. So for Ted, Arvel, Joanne, how are you guys seeing that kind of embraced, or is it still a little bit of an uphill battle, as exciting as this all is?
It's been a big uphill battle for me, but I just recently joined WB about a year ago, and I came from aerospace industry, chief engineer working on antenna satellites. And so being in that industry, we always did something new. We were always doing stuff that was impossible. It was still a 100-year-old company. It was Boeing. Went to another 100-year-old company, which was WB. And you're gonna get challenged. I get challenged all the time, but it's just about finding that one champion, and it's just about being passionate. And just the more resistance that you get, then you know you're on to something good. And so I've been fortunate to have champions around in every department to make up for the 150, naysayers. So it's just about being with passion and being authentic, and then and moving forward.
I'm lucky enough right now to have a unique setup where I'm basically an entrepreneurship team. So, I worked at lots of big companies. The company I was with before this was smaller, it was Singularity University. But at HP, the VR team we see ourselves as a startup within the company. We treat the rest of the company as our VCs who are funding us. Which is great. HP has been around for a long time. The first customer was actually Walt Disney, the person, not the company, but the Walt Disney, the man. The company's always been about inventing technology, inventing and reinventing technology in the future. And we see virtual reality, augmented reality, immersive computing as the future of computing, not just the future of media and entertainment. And so the company knows that it's really important to build this area, and lets us sort of run and be able to run more at the pace of some of the startups, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to be successful in this industry.
So for any legacy company, the biggest challenge is every initiative has to be looked at from the lens of how big we are going to be able to scale. Is it worth it? Is the net present value worth it, even before a consumer has validated or invalidated it? So the difference comes is whenever you run like a startup within a big company, but you have the independence and an execution where you let it scale with the consumers, and that's the only way it can scale. So I'm not taking on the company like HP, but when Apple comes up with a new laptop, they don't need to sell it to at least 10 million people. HP, before it puts anything in production, has to see that it can sell 20 million. Now, in the time that they're going to make that technology scalable, the technology has moved on. So as a consumer, we're missing out.
Yeah.
Please, Ted.
Oh, just from my standpoint, if you're curious about this field of study, I'd recommend you read a book called The Innovator's Dilemma. It's kind of like the Bible of innovation. It gives you a very good, deep core understanding of why small, nimble organizations with a different value chain than an existing organization that already has a value chain can actually succeed when the larger company can't. And the extraordinary difficulty of a company to really act like a startup. So we'll throw the term around easily, but to actually force a company to have a division or a department that primary goal is to cannibalize and destroy the mothership, that's real startup. And that's something pretty hard for a lot of companies to swallow. So they say they do it, but they don't really do it. And my goal set with the studio, I work for Fox and I work for Paramount, is to see how close to the edge that studio is willing to go. Will they really start to accept that if you really want to be the studio of the next century, you have to learn how to crush the existing studio of the existing century like a tin can. And it's an interesting discussion that you might imagine to have with executives all the time. But that's what real startup mentality is all about.
Well, we talked a lot about consumer engagement and being responsive to what folks want, so I think we should heed some of the conversation that we were having and open it up for questions. So there's a mic in the center. If people want to line up, we will kick off questions.
In virtual reality, we address sight, sound, and motion, but what about smell? I'd be curious to know any comments about that.
It's a great question. We believe in full immersion. It's one of the limitations of home in that you don't necessarily get haptic feedback. You don't necessarily get sight and smell, but the Void today You have every one of your senses. If you're floating over the lava fields of Mustafar, you smell the burning lava. You feel the wind. You feel the 30-degree temperature rise. If you're standing in Ghostbusters on the top of a 92nd floor in New York, you feel the temperature drop with wind by several degrees. So I think as we go forward, that is an essential part to actually, it's not just technology, there's human interaction and illusion that's just as important to actually make it real.
Next question?
Hi, I'm an engineer, and part of what I do is large art installations designed for art that you actually experience, interact with. And I get asked a lot of crazy things that sound like VR, sound like AR, and the cost is wrong and the scope is wrong. What should I be listening as an engineer? What should I be listening for when people ask me something that is actually doable, achievable, deliverable? What language or what should I be listening for as the engineer that actually has to make it work?
Wow, it's a big question. I think you have to kind of listen to what they want to achieve and then ask yourself the question of, is the medium of virtual reality putting people into a headset, a box on their face with a backpack or a tethered device to a computer, is that the right thing to use to deliver your message? Is at some point in the future some sort of glassware that allows you to see through the device and connect it to the world that way? Is that the right way to deliver the message? Or very often, if you're trying to deliver to a group of people, and it doesn't need to be so hyper-individualized, you're probably not going to use an individualized device right now. You're going to use a group device. You're going to use a dome projection or projection mapping or something that's a little more suited to a group. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's
I would say the
the
creative community is rapidly evolving in this field as well. We have giant graphic companies that do huge films that don't understand how to make truly immersive VR experiences. We have amazing VR engineers that don't truly understand how to make full immersion VR storytelling. I would say just that there's no rules at this point in the game. It's you're making up the rules and think of it from a very holistic point of view as opposed to a singular point of view.
Next question?
Have any of you guys had a chance to test the equipment from that company out of Florida? And if so, what do you think of it in its current state and its potential?
I think anybody that has experienced it is probably still under an NDA.
Yeah, but I can tell you I've experienced it, and it's magical. It's pretty great. I can't wait for the world to see.
No pun
what they're doing.
intended.
No pun intended. Give them a wide berth. Give them a lot of room because they're really trying to do something new and remarkable, and they're not relying on the past. They're trying to do something new, meaning they're going to make some mistakes along the way, and that's totally okay. People need to understand that the journey they're on, if they get it right, is going to be fantastic, and you got to give them some room. So every time you read something about them, you're like, that's not right. Kind of ignore that. Like, just give them some space. Give them a chance to actually make that magic real.
That goes for all of us, by the way. The mistakes are going to lead to the wonder. We won't be able to achieve the impossible without stumbling and figuring things out along the way.
That's
Hi,
right.
telecommunication providers are buying studios and content creators. Where is this going to drive creativity, particularly for the little guy who's trying to get a new thing out there?
I guess everyone's looking at me.
Yeah, it's you. You're good.
In terms of creativity, I think being able to provide content to the user, whether it's a phone or whether it's through an OTT service, I think will allow for more variety in content, like what we see on Netflix, So I think that's a good opportunity for creatives. At the same time, I, see consolidation when you hear about the Comcast that just fell through, and then Disney about to buy Fox, and of course AT&T with WB. So, I'm hopeful there's some consolidation going around, but then also I feel that we do actually have more opportunities now that we have targeted content for particular smaller groups. So it's kind of like catch-22, it's kind of both ways. So that's my take anyway.
I was at NBCU when we moved from being. Hold on 1 second, I don't think your mic's working.
So I was at NBCU when we moved from being owned by GE to being owned by Comcast, which you could look at as sort of just a cable or a pipe, but they actually did have a very interesting, they had a much more in-depth understanding of content and creativity and the risks that you had to take and the investment that was needed. So, you know, I think that I wouldn't be so worried about the death of creativity being owned by a distribution platform or having deeper relationships with distribution platform. And I do agree, you also end up with having, you know, where you have more distribution and you have more direct access to specific consumers, you're able to build more types of content that don't have to just be for a broadcast network where you have to be all things to all people. So in terms of letting different voices come up and different voices be heard, and it's actually potentially a positive.
In many ways, it's an issue of curation and finding the content. I mean, if you look at Amazon Prime, for example, I've spent far too many nights going through and just browsing through content. There's a lot of diverse stuff on there, and a lot of it's complete crap. But like, there's not really any barrier to entry. Like, almost anyone as a content creator can get stuff up on Amazon. So yes, there's consolidation, but as these guys have said, there's lots of opportunity.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just with the announcement about having HBO compete with Netflix and make more content, I think that shows that there's going to be more investment in content. So things are gonna figure themselves out, but I think it'll be a positive for consumers.
Next question.
Hi, I'd love to hear from each of you regarding your working relationship with writers. I recently completed a tour of duty at one of those legacy companies you were talking about as a writer, and we talked to a lot of VR startups who all were pretty much in agreement that storytelling was the quote-unquote killer app of VR, but none of them were hiring writers or storytellers of any kind. So can you talk a little bit about how you've worked with storytellers and writers specifically?
I hired about 5 writers, a writer's room, for an experimental project that no one will ever see. So, you know, there's direct, it wasn't just one writer, it was a team of writers because they're trying to figure out how to do a new type of storytelling. So I think there's an appreciation. There's one camp that likes to focus a lot on tech, and we need them to do it, but I think we're starting to see another camp that's going to focus on creativity and storytelling, because I think that's where the next innovation has to occur, is in content, because we're all trying to figure out what's the close-up in VR and what's, you know, all the storytelling language that has existed for cinema for 100 years. We're all trying to figure that out. So you're going to see a lot more content innovation that includes writers and everyone else involved.
Every one of our experiences is writers-based. There's nothing that we do. The technology is there, and it's only going to escalate. Nothing in the void can exist without someone sitting down, hand to laptop, and writing it out. It's all 100% storytelling and then bringing that to life in ways people don't expect.
Thank you.
Hi, as somebody who has an Oculus Rift, PSVR, Oculus Gear, I find myself sometimes having to put extra effort into actually using these devices instead of just like normal methods of consumption. Where do you see the technology having to go in the future for people to actually adopt it to mainstream standards?
You know, I dig into this one pretty hardcore almost every day. I referred to it earlier, I call them the friction points. There's tons of friction points, which is what you're feeling, is okay, I gotta put the thing on, I gotta fire up the computer, I gotta get to their little, you know, walled garden of their version of the app thing, and then I gotta do all that. What I look at is all the steps that are breaking those down. We're gonna go wireless. We're gonna be 6'd off wireless very soon, which means full spatial ability, not just look around ability. Sorry. We're going to make the devices much more light, much more nimble, much higher resolution, the ability to see through them effectively when you want to and obscure them completely when you want to, all the same device. And at the same time we're going to do all that, chopping away at all the friction points, we're going to lower the price of entry dramatically so that the cost of it will be fairly nominal, And the ability for the creative community to realize that there is a large amount of these devices now floating around the planet that people want content for will blossom. And again, that's somewhere on that 10-year curve. So it's not tomorrow, but it's coming.
One way of looking at it is it will be a replacement for your phone. So you have your phone with you at all times. So in this future where you'll have this device that does VR and AR and it does everything that your phone does today, plus a lot more. So it may be lower priced, it may not, because it's replacing, if it's a replacement for your phone, it doesn't have to be under that price. But it's an exciting day, and at that point there'll be a lot more content available, not just for entertainment and games, but for all the other sectors. All the how do you get around by GPS? How do you order your food? How do you get dates? Like all the things that people are using their phones for today, and many things that we haven't discovered yet.
We have time for one more question.
Tarang, thank you for the 7-Eleven app. With the Internet of Things, when will you hook up the Slurpee machines to the I really need to know when the cola is running low or out.
It's being worked on as of right now. So.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure we can top that for any sort of wrap up.
It's the best last question.